Hello and welcome back to What Is It About the Weather? I'm your host, Mark Jelonic, and this week we're going to be doing our end of quarter short snippet episode. So sort of like we did at the beginning of summer, now we're at the beginning of meteorological fall, and it's a holiday weekend here in the U.S., so I'm going to take advantage of that and hope others can as well. But I didn't want to not say anything, and I actually wanted to take some time to introduce a new series we're going to do called What Is It About Clouds? Right? We all like clouds. We like to see things in the clouds. They add some diversity to the sky. And I've had requests for cloud topics, and specifically, I want to thank Ning, who was very insistent that I do some sort of cloud episode. And as you know, I don't like to get over science-y too much with topics, at least from a meteorological standpoint. And this could do that. I mean, I could do multiple episodes and still not cover everything. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to change it up a little bit. This is going to be something that's not going to show up in the regular feed. We'll talk about that a little later. But I'm going to introduce the concept of clouds here, and then there's going to be follow-on video series, and it's going to be ongoing for a long period of time. And we'll talk about that some more. So, I mean, let's talk about cloud dynamics just very basically. So, you know, water vapors around us all the time. We've done the evaporation episode and, talked about how water can move from a condensed state into an evaporated state and become water vapor. Well, clouds are just the opposite, right? So usually what's involved is warm air with lots of moisture rises, cools, water condenses. Water's still light enough to float, so it turns into clouds. Now, that's simplifying things quite a bit, and I'll put a little primer that you can go look at. And, if you really want to get into nuclei and the microphysics and everything, it is an interesting topic, but it's not for everybody. So I didn't want to get into too much detail in the podcast here. But generally speaking, we have cloud types that are broken down by the form they take and the elevation. So, if you start at the low-level clouds, and these are, things closer to the surface, they tend not to have a prefix to them, although mid-levels in the troposphere have alto added to them, and high levels in the troposphere have cirro or cirrus added to them. Now, at the same time, we've also got form structures. So cirro, not just elevation, can define the form of a cloud. So if you think of cirrus clouds, they're high elevation, kind of wispy clouds. Okay, and then you've got things like nimbus, which, as the name implies, the Latin base, has to do with rain. You have cumulo, which are probably the traditional clouds you think of when you think of things taking shapes or representing different things. They're usually in a cumulo form. And then lastly, you've got stratiform, which are more of those thick layers that are thinner, but in terms of total elevation, but they kind of are a dense kind of sheet-like layer. So you have all those components, and they come together, and they give you the different things like, cumulonimbus, which is, it starts at a low elevation, but it rises up and becomes a thunderstorm, right? So it's got those different components in its name. Now, there's these base clouds, but there's a lot of things, you'll hear things like, wave clouds and there's two types of wave clouds, and I'm not going to get into all the details today, but we've started to give different clouds different names, even though they may fit in a general genre of type. They have very specific characteristics, whether that's wave clouds or shelf clouds or roll clouds. I had a roll cloud come through a couple weeks ago with a storm front that was pushing through here. So what I'm going to do with this series is introduce you to individual clouds and talk about their formation and what's going on there. And, I'll try to hit all the kind of the known ones that I discussed in that basic thing, but I also want to introduce some of these more specific ones, and talk about scud clouds and mammatus clouds and all these things that are unique and have very peculiar situations maybe where they come up, and do it and focus on one at a time. So I'm going to start later in September, and each one will be, 1 to 2 minutes. It's going to be short little videos, and because of that, I'm just going to put it on YouTube. Now, I will tweet about its availability, but if you have not subscribed to the YouTube channel, which you can do from the show notes, I'll put a link in, or go to our homepage, and there's a link there. You can go get connected, and that way you'll be notified when those cloud episodes come out. Like I said, I'll probably do the first one in late September and do one every couple of weeks. That's the goal. I don't know that it'll have a defined regular schedule, but hopefully as I come across the different cloud types that are useful, I'll put another one out there. And again, given the unusual type of cloud formations, you can, like I said, you can have wave, yet you can have gravity wave, and they're really two different things. And, I could swear the other day Godzilla was coming to me in the shape of a cloud. So we have this fascination with cloud, and I just want to share it and talk about what you're seeing so you can learn a little bit more. That one may get a little more sciencey at times, but again, trying to keep the episode short. Hopefully it won't do too much of that, and it'll introduce you a little more about what's going on in the particular case of a given cloud type. So again, if you're not part of the YouTube subscription process already, please do that, and you will get notified, again, if you're interested in it. If you don't have to worry about it, and it's not going to overfill the regular feed, because I don't want to do that at this point either. So keep an eye out for what is it about clouds, and hopefully you will enjoy it. Now, a couple other short things before I go and let you get on to whatever your weekend may hold. I got schooled a little bit about the Black Death after the last audio episode, and I want to thank Boris Schmid, who was one of the authors of the article that I referenced in there, the main article, but also a professor at Arizona State called Monica Green. And both of them provided a bunch of additional information about the evolution of what we're learning, even in the last couple of years, about how our thinking has changed about what's going on with respect to the Black Death. Now, keep in mind, I'm not going to ever be an expert in it, but their information, if the topic is of interest to you, can get you deeper into some of the latest thinking and our understanding of not just the European component, but the broader component. And in the end, it doesn't really change what we discussed in terms of climate versus weather. It does seem to be more longer scales, but likely that climate had some impact on what went down, how it went down, and the way it progressed multiple times over its history. Okay. So thank you both to Boris Schmidt and Monica Green for their feedback. Now, the last thing I want to touch on, and we're going to do a future episode on this, is social media and weather forecasting. I cannot believe some of the things I've read lately on whether it's been internet or Twitter feeds or Facebook or whatever it is, about just some bad headlines on different things. In particular, Hurricane Hermine just passed to my east in the last 24 hours. And the headlines that were going around this storm well before it was even formed, we get a thing, forecasters do sometime, that we call storm fatigue. And this was definitely a case, because this thing was, it was going to happen. It was going to happen. We were following it when it wasn't even a tropical cyclone. Then it became a weak tropical cyclone. And it kept going and going and going and going. And finally became this thing. Well, by the time it became something, those of us who had been following it, you get kind of worn out, and that's a dangerous place. But around this thing, we had a couple other tropical areas, not even necessarily active ones at a time, that were driving all sorts of strange headlines, as like, triple threat to the U.S. coastline, and, tropical storm brings Zika virus to Florida, and all these things. And some of it was some credible things, like NBC News had a bad headline, and the Daily Mail, which I know is a little bit of a tabloid in the UK, but it was running an Associated Press story. And I almost have to believe these stories were put together by bots, because some of them didn't even look like they were written by human, the way it merged things together that were three different events. I mean, the Atlantic Ocean is huge, and it was taking the strongest storm at the time, which was out in the middle of the Atlantic and not impacting anybody, and used it as the baseline, where these other two areas at the point in time the article was written was nothing. And so I just want to remind you, the last time we did the short episode, I was like, stop what you're doing. If you have a meteorologist you trust, thank them for what they do for you. And I'm going to tell you, do it again. But connect with them. If you're active on social media, connect with them through one of the mediums that they use, and trust what they're telling you. And don't, if you come across these sensationalist headlines, that's exactly what they are. Now, sometimes there might be a valid story behind them, but if someone really has to grab you with really strong headlines like that, be leery that just maybe you ought to double check it. And that holds true, certainly not just for weather items, but for any items as well. So find that trusted source and connect with them on social media, and use it to make sure you're getting the appropriate up-to-date information, because there are events where you need to know right away, but there's also stuff that you can just use them to double check whether something you've been told is really a valid piece of information. All right, so again, trusted source. Remember your trusted source. I remember doing the episode about I'd rather you get a deterministic forecast from a good source than believe some of these people that are printing spaghetti plots on hurricane tracks at 360 hours and telling you watch out. We Mets get into these conversations, and there's reasons we do it, and we're thinking that far in advance, but we also understand the nuances of what's going on, whether a model's good at that time frame, etc. So trusted source. Now, again, we're 6 months in, and I just want to take a moment, kind of like at 3 months in, and say thank you. I've enjoyed doing this. I hope you've enjoyed it and are getting something out of it. I want to just thank you for sharing, whether it's been sending emails or telling people about it. That's been huge. We're down to 3 states left, right? Wyoming, North Dakota, and Vermont. And it's pretty amazing we've gotten the rest of them done. We've got almost a quarter of the world's countries that have listeners. Now, again, maybe not everybody's listening every week or whatever, and for all I know, they may listen to an episode and go, "Oh, I'm not listening to that crackpot anymore." But it's just nice to know that people are enjoying the episodes, people are downloading and hopefully getting something out of it. Hopefully some knowledge, hopefully some entertainment, and maybe just making your weather-related world a little more interesting. So I will say I'm going to start the app review process later in the month. So if you have any final feedback, particularly about precipitation, I'm going to do an episode. I'm going to do a video one first, probably. I don't remember the exact order, related to radar apps. So more of nowcasting, a little bit of forecasting in there, but it's really more nowcasting. And also going to do an audio episode to get in a little more about precipitation forecast and why the challenges that are involved in that, and talk about some apps that are good on that front, or that I'd recommend on that front as well. So keep an eye out for that. That'll be later in September. So the cloud's coming, the first set of app reviews coming, and let's just hit it. Rate, share, validate, pledge, RSVP. If you listen on iTunes, if you think about going in and giving us a review and a rating, that'd be great. Or if your podcasting source allows you to do some sort of rating, that'd be great. Sharing, we already touched on that. Thank you for all you've done. Just keep doing it. Validate, along with the app, feedback. Any feedback is appreciated. Again, the Black Death feedback I got, like I said, I got schooled a little bit, but that was good. It was very helpful, and it allowed me to update the show notes for the episode and put some new resources out there that hopefully people can take advantage of. And getting episodes from you guys is great. Like I said, sometimes it's things I've already been thinking about, but a lot of times I'm like, never really thought about that. So please keep sending the thoughts, ideas. You can do that either via email, whatisitabouttheweather@gmail.com, or go to the website and there's a contact form. Both of them come via email. So either way will get to me basically the same way. Lastly, pledge. Patreon's changing their setup, and you'll see this month I'm going to change it as well. So I'm not going to dwell on that, but we're going to go more to a monthly setup as opposed to a per episode setup. So connect with us. Website, whatisitabouttheweather.com. You can always find all the information there, whether it's a past episode, whether it's these other ways to connect. If you like just getting the notifications about the stories and the episodes and the additional resources, follow What Is It About the WX, because they only let you have so many letters. WX short for weather, for those that don't know. That one's basic, straightforward. It doesn't follow anybody, so if you're looking for followers, follow me. I mean, I generally follow people back at Mark_Jelinek, Jelinek. And I post a little bit more there, pictures about weather, but it's also some other non-weather things. But a lot of it's weather. I think you'll find at least probably 2/3 or 3/4 is. So again, if you like weather-related stories, if you like weather-related pictures or that sort of thing, I put them there. I also put others. Sometimes there's overlap, sometimes there's not, on Instagram as well. It's also Mark_Jelinek. And you can also follow me, I think it's Mark T. Jelinek on Facebook. Again, I don't put as much on Facebook. I may at some point in the future, but for now, I'll probably wait until I do one for the show. But it's just, again, it's trying to manage everything, so I don't do it there. And I'll put the link in the show notes again for the Google album that I've been sharing about my pictures as well. I just, I know a lot of people like to see those things, and so I do try to share them some different outlets, and not all of them get the same thing. So Twitter and Instagram probably get the most, although almost all of those end up in the Google photo album at some point. So on that note, and here we are at the roughly halfway of a normal episode already, I just, again, like to say thank you for all your support, and hopefully you're enjoying it. And let's keep moving forward and enjoying what it is that connects us with weather in so many ways. And until next time, may you have interesting, enjoyable, and of course, as always, safe weather.